What if I told you that the greatest danger in your life isn't something loud or obvious? Not failure, not heartbreak, not even time slipping away. What if I told you that the most terrifying thing happening to you right now is that you are slowly disappearing and you don't even know it? You're not losing time. You're not missing opportunities. You're losing yourself, not in a dramatic explosion, not in a public breakdown, but quietly, silently. Day by day, moment by moment, you're fading. Your sharpness, your clarity, your inner fire, all of it dimming. Welcome to Success Lesson. If this message makes your heart beat faster, if you feel like something inside you has just been named, then keep listening, because this could be the moment everything changes. But first, do one thing. Hit that subscribe button and support this channel. It's the only way we can continue creating messages that wake you up when the world wants you to sleep. Now, let's begin. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to feel tired all the time, even when you've done nothing all day? How you can lie in bed for 10 hours and still wake up exhausted? How weekends come and go, yet instead of feeling refreshed, you feel heavier? You think it's burnout. You think you need more rest. But the truth is darker, more subtle. You're not tired because you're overused. You're tired because you're unused. We have been conditioned to believe that preserving our energy means saving it, storing it, protecting it. But in reality, the human spirit doesn't thrive by being tucked away. You don't stay alive by playing safe. You stay alive by engaging, by moving, by using yourself fully. And when you stop doing that, you don't just slow down, you start to decay. Not physically at first, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This decay doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm. It creeps in quietly. When you start skipping conversations with yourself, when you stop asking why, when you silence that inner whisper that once guided your ambition, you still go to work, you still pay the bills, you still smile. But the version of you that was once wide awake is now half asleep behind the eyes. You become numb. You stop dreaming. You no longer get excited about learning something new or meeting someone different or challenging your own perspective. You start saying, "I'm fine," too often and believing it less and less. Fine becomes a mask you wear, not a reality you live. And the scariest part? Nobody notices. Because this kind of dying doesn't make noise. You don't collapse. You coast. This is the silent epidemic that no one talks about. The epidemic of losing yourself while still being alive. And it's fueled not by chaos, but by comfort. Not by trauma, but by repetition. Not by enemies, but by the absence of self-use. That's the paradox. You're not breaking down from doing too much, you're falling apart from doing too little with who you really are. And deep down, you know it. There was a time when you were sharper, braver, more curious. You used to write, you used to dance, you used to question things, you used to plan, you used to feel. But then came the days of routine, the days of just getting by, the days where good enough became the ceiling, and what once made you feel alive faded. You stopped using the parts of yourself that make you you, and according to a universal rule of life, use it or lose it, what you stop using doesn't just stay dormant, it disappears. Your self-awareness, gone. Your inner voice, muffled. Your sense of purpose, distant. Your fire, flickering. And you barely even noticed. So how does it begin? It starts the moment you let autopilot take over. The moment you stop being intentional. The moment you say, "I'll deal with that later." And when later becomes never, you lose the momentum of becoming. You lose the motion that builds self-respect. You lose the battle quietly. But the good news is this. If your decline is silent, your return can be too. You don't need a revolution. You need one clear decision to use yourself again, to wake up not just your body, but your attention, your thought, your truth, your will. You start by noticing where your energy is going, noticing which parts of yourself you haven't touched in weeks, months, or even years. Are you still challenging yourself? Are you still curious? Are you still present in your own life? If the answer is no, don't panic. Just decide to begin again. Begin by being honest. Name what's missing. Begin by reflecting. What part of you have you silenced? Begin by acting. Not tomorrow, now. Write a sentence, speak a truth, walk a block, ask a question you've been avoiding. Do one thing today that breaks the loop. Because the moment you do, something in you will shift. The fog will lift, and you'll remember who you were before the world told you to stop using yourself. This is not about doing more. This is about doing you. It's about living fully, not efficiently. It's about showing up, not perfectly, but truthfully. It's about ending the slow disappearance of your essence by making the bold decision to show up again. So, if you've been feeling numb, empty, restless, or just not you, understand this. It's not laziness, it's not failure, it's the result of underuse. And the solution is within reach, not in a self help book, not in a new app, but in a moment, this one right now, where you finally say, I will stop fading. I will start using myself again. Because what you don't use, you lose. And you, my friend, were not made to be lost. You were made to live, fully, boldly, now. We often speak of the mind as the seat of power, the soul as the compass of meaning. But what we often forget is that the body is the ground zero of all experience. Before you ever think a thought, before you ever feel an emotion, your body is already involved. It breathes, it reacts, it stores, it remembers. And yet, in the name of modern convenience and technological ease, we've abandoned the very foundation we were given, the human body, not through violence. Not through negligence in the conventional sense, but through quiet disuse. Most people don't realize that their physical decline isn't a result of aging or illness. It's a result of inaction, of stillness, of a lifestyle where movement has become optional and passivity is the default. We were not designed for stillness. Our biology is rooted in movement. Muscles grow by resistance. Bones strengthen through impact. Joints stay healthy through motion. Blood circulates to support life only when the body moves. But today, we've structured our entire lives to remove movement as much as possible. We sit to work, we sit to eat, we sit to relax, we even sit to entertain ourselves. And when we feel tired, we believe we need to sit more, when in fact, that exhaustion is a symptom of stagnation, not exertion. The body does not crave more rest, it craves meaningful use. Energy, contrary to popular belief, does not accumulate through stillness. It multiplies through circulation. And yet, we wonder why we feel sluggish, heavy, disconnected, why we struggle to sleep deeply, or why we wake up tired even after long hours of lying down, why simple tasks leave us winded. The answer is brutally simple. The body you don't use becomes the body you lose. This isn't about aesthetics. This isn't about sculpted abs or gym memberships or fitness fads. This is about a profound truth. Your physical self is not just a container. It is a contributor to your clarity, your emotion, your drive. When the body weakens, everything else begins to bend with it. Your moods shift, your focus falters, your confidence erodes. The things you once found easy now seem daunting, not because you've changed, but because your body has not been summoned to carry you there. We tend to separate the mind from the body, as if they were operating in parallel, unrelated tracks, but they are one system. When your posture collapses, so does your breath, and with it your mental presence. When your blood circulation is poor, so is your cognitive alertness. When you are not breathing deeply, you are not thinking clearly. The body is not just where you live, it is how you live. And if you do not reclaim your physical presence, no amount of intellectual awareness or emotional intelligence will sustain you. Many people believe that physical movement is a luxury, something you do when you have free time, when you're not too tired, when you finally get around to it. But movement is not optional. It is a biological necessity. Just as your heart must beat and your lungs must fill with air, your limbs must move, your muscles must engage, your spine must extend. Otherwise, you slowly, invisibly deteriorate, not because life is cruel, but because nature is consistent. What you don't use, you lose. The good news is that your body, as quietly as it declines, can also heal quietly. You don't need to become a fitness fanatic. You don't need to run 10 miles or lift heavy weights. You simply need to use your body again. Use it with intention. Use it with respect. Use it in ways that align with the life you want to live. Walk instead of scroll. Stretch instead of slump. Climb stairs instead of waiting for elevators. Clean your own space. Stand up every hour. Go outside and breathe air that hasn't passed through an air conditioner. Let the sun hit your skin. Feel the ground beneath your feet. These are not trivial acts. They are reclamations. Each one reminds your body and your mind that you are alive and engaged. There is something sacred in these small acts of motion, a kind of homecoming, a reconnection to the part of you that remembers what it means to be vibrant, energized, awake. And perhaps most importantly, these acts signal to yourself that you matter, that you are not a machine to be maintained, but a living organism to be expressed. Some people will say, but I'm too tired. But that tiredness is exactly why you must move. It's not the kind of tiredness that comes from hard labor. It's the kind that comes from energy that has nowhere to go, like a river dammed up, like a muscle wrapped in plaster. You don't release that fatigue by sleeping more. You release it by moving it through, by letting it find momentum again. Others will say, but I'm not athletic. Good. This isn't about athletics. This is about aliveness. It's about function. It's about standing up and saying, this body is mine, and I will not let it go to waste. You don't need perfect form. You need consistent motion. You don't need speed. You need sincerity. Your body is the first thing you were given when you arrived on this planet. It is the vessel through which every experience, every connection, every insight is filtered. It is your instrument, your home. And whether you realize it or not, your entire emotional landscape, your joy, your pain, your inspiration, is amplified or muted depending on the state of this vessel. So take it seriously, not in a rigid, obsessive way, but in a reverent, loving way. Recognize the power you have to shift your entire life experience simply by returning to movement, by choosing not to sit still when life asks you to participate. The road back to vitality doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with intention. It begins when you look in the mirror and say, I want to feel alive again. I want to be strong enough to carry my own dreams. I want to move through the world not as a ghost, but as someone fully here. And once you begin, something remarkable happens. Your body responds, not instantly, not loudly, but steadily. And as it reawakens, so will your spirit. You'll begin to feel lighter, not just in weight, but in possibility. You'll sleep better, think clearer, connect deeper. And you'll look back one day and realize all it took was one decision to use yourself again. Not for the sake of productivity, not for anyone else's approval, but because life in its rawest form is movement, and you in your truest form are meant to move. There's a particular kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's the silence inside your own mind when you're faced with something important, an emotion, a decision, a relationship, and you realize you don't know what to think. Not because the problem is too big, but because the part of you that used to know how to think through it has gone quiet. And the more you try to reach for clarity, the more it slips through your fingers. This isn't confusion. This is what it feels like when your ability to think for yourself begins to shut down. This doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, like a fog settling in over a familiar landscape. You still remember the shape of the world, but you can't see it clearly anymore. You used to be sharp. You used to question things. You used to analyze your life, your choices, your feelings. But somewhere along the way, you stopped. Not because you got lazy, not because you gave up, but because no one was asking you to think about the things that matter most. Not your boss, not your friends, not even yourself. You learned to use your mind to solve problems at work, to meet deadlines, to respond to external demands. But when it came to your own life, your inner life, you went silent. You started living by reflex, not reflection. You let habits replace intentions. You let distractions take the place of real thought. And now, when something personal arises, something that requires depth, nuance, care, you feel helpless. Not because you're not smart, but because you haven't practiced thinking for yourself in far too long. And that's the real issue. Thinking is not just an ability, it's a practice. It's a discipline. Just like the body needs movement, the mind needs challenges. Without them, it doesn't just rest, it atrophies. We forget this because we associate intelligence with static capacity, with something fixed and permanent. But your mind is not a trophy, it's a tool. And like any tool, it dulls when left unused. Think about how often you truly sit with a question that matters to you. Not what's for dinner, or what time is my meeting, but am I living in alignment with who I really am? Why do I feel unfulfilled? What is the truth behind this recurring conflict in my life? If those questions feel too heavy or unfamiliar, that's not your fault. You're not broken, but you are out of shape. Mental sharpness doesn't come from being busy. It comes from deliberate thinking, from giving your attention not just to tasks, but to truth, from sitting in silence, not to escape the world, but to enter your own. But that silence is hard to face when you've trained your mind to avoid it. Because what waits in that silence are the unresolved questions, the buried fears, the unspoken needs. And if you've spent years avoiding those voices, it can feel terrifying to turn toward them again. But here's the paradox: the longer you avoid thinking deeply about your life, the harder it becomes to live it fully. You may still function, you may still achieve, but deep down, something will always feel off, like you're missing a conversation that only you can have, like you're acting out a script you didn't write. And you won't know how to rewrite it because the author inside you has gone quiet. To reclaim your mind, you must begin using it again, not just for productivity, but for clarity, for truth, for intimacy with yourself. That doesn't mean overthinking every moment. It means daring to think at all. It means making space in your life for thought that isn't transactional, for reflection that doesn't have to produce immediate results, for asking yourself questions that don't have easy answers, and being okay with that. Start small. Take 15 minutes a day to write. Not for anyone else, just for you. Ask yourself what you're feeling and why. Ask yourself what's working and what's not. Ask yourself what you're avoiding and what it might cost you. Don't edit. Don't judge. Just write. Let the page become a mirror. Let your thoughts become visible again. Because what you can see, you can work with. And what you avoid will continue to shape your life from the shadows. You don't need to have perfect thoughts. You just need to have honest ones. And the more you think honestly, the stronger your mind becomes. Not in rigidity, but in resilience. You begin to see patterns. You begin to understand your reactions. You begin to anticipate your own needs and make decisions that align with your deeper values, not just your immediate impulses. You also begin to reclaim your voice, not just the one you use to speak to others, but the one you use to speak to yourself. You learn to challenge your own assumptions, to push back against the lies you've inherited or the compromises you've made in silence. You learn to think critically, not just about the world, but about your role in it. And in doing so, you remember that your mind is not just a processor, it is a compass. It can guide you back to yourself if you let it. Reclaiming your mind doesn't require dramatic changes. It requires commitment to attention. It requires a decision to stop numbing, to stop avoiding, to stop outsourcing your clarity to others. It means choosing every day to stay present in your own life, not just with your body, not just with your schedule, but with your mind fully awake. Because the scariest thing isn't making the wrong decision. It's never deciding at all. It's living your life on someone else's terms because you forgot how to think in your own voice. But that voice isn't gone. It's just waiting. Waiting for you to sit still long enough to hear it. Waiting for you to ask again. Waiting for you to think, not perfectly, but fully. Your mind is not broken. It is buried under layers of noise and obligation and busyness. But if you begin digging, even gently, it will rise again. It will speak again. It will guide you again. And when it does, you will not just feel smarter. You will feel whole. Not because you know everything, but because you're finally thinking again. Thinking your own thoughts, asking your own questions, living your own truth. Not borrowed, not inherited, not automatic, but real. And that, more than any external achievement, is what it means to come home to yourself. There is a quiet epidemic stealing more lives than we realize. Not by taking breath or breaking bones, but by slowly fracturing our presence. It doesn't show up on medical reports or in urgent conversations. It happens in the background, undetected, accepted, even rewarded. It's called distraction. And the longer it goes unaddressed, the more it takes. Your depth, your peace, your ability to focus long enough to actually live your life rather than just skim through it. Most people don't even notice the damage at first. They believe they're just busy. That it's normal to juggle 5 things at once. That opening 7 tabs and jumping between conversations, tasks, and notifications is just modern efficiency. But what they're really doing is slicing their attention into pieces too small to be of any real use. What they're really losing is something far more precious than time. They're losing presence. And with it, the ability to stay rooted in anything meaningful long enough to be changed by it. We've trained ourselves to respond rather than reflect, to check instead of connect, to scroll instead of sit still. And over time, this constant fragmentation becomes more than a habit. It becomes a worldview. We begin to relate to everything, including ourselves, in microbursts. Our thoughts are scattered, our conversations shallow, our relationships strained, our ideas underdeveloped. Not because we lack intelligence or care, but because we've forgotten how to stay. To stay with one thing long enough to let it shape us. Focus is not just about productivity. It is the doorway to presence. And presence is what gives life its weight. Without focus, we don't just lose effectiveness, we lose access to depth, to love that matures, to work that fulfills, to silence that heals, to conversations that transform. Because all of these things require one thing: sustained attention. And that's the one thing we're rapidly forgetting how to offer. If you found yourself feeling overwhelmed by simple tasks, restless during quiet moments, or exhausted by things that used to energize you, the culprit may not be your workload. It may be your wiring. Your attention has been trained by years of exposure to rapid-fire information and relentless stimulation to behave like a squirrel on caffeine, always darting, always scanning, never grounded, never still. This isn't entirely your fault. You live in a world that profits off your attention being divided. Platforms are engineered to interrupt. Notifications are designed to hijack. The more distracted you are, the more valuable you become to systems that measure your worth in clicks and views. But here's the truth they won't tell you. The cost of constant distraction is your sense of self. Because when your attention is always elsewhere, you are never fully here. You cannot feel whole when your mind is in pieces. You cannot feel connected when you're never fully present in a conversation. You cannot feel peace when every quiet moment is filled with noise you didn't ask for. And you cannot feel real joy when your experience of the world is constantly being interrupted, diluted, and redirected. The good news is that attention, like any muscle, can be trained. It can be rebuilt, not through willpower alone, but through design, through creating conditions in your daily life that invite your mind to return home, to stay with one thing, to focus not for performance, but for presence. Start with the simple. Silence your notifications, all of them. Give yourself the gift of uninterrupted space, even if it's only 15 minutes a day. Choose one activity to do with full attention. Eat a meal without your phone. Read a single page without switching tabs. Have a conversation where you don't glance at a screen. Walk outside and let your senses absorb the moment. These acts may seem trivial, but they are not. They are resistance against a system that wants you scattered. They are declarations that you are reclaiming your mind. You'll notice that the first few days feel uncomfortable. You'll reach for your phone without thinking. You'll feel twitchy, even anxious, when you try to sit still. That's not a sign that you're failing. That's a sign of how deeply your attention has been compromised. And it's also a sign that healing is possible. Because just like with any detox, the discomfort is evidence that something unnatural has taken root and that your system is fighting to return to balance. Eventually, something shifts. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. Not the reactive chatter, but the quieter truths underneath. You begin to finish a thought before another hijacks it. You begin to experience time not as something chasing you, but as something you're finally inhabiting. And in those moments, life becomes richer. Not because anything outside you changed, but because you finally slowed down enough to notice what's been here all along. When you train your attention, you train your nervous system to stop living in constant survival mode. You signal to your body and brain that it's safe to rest, to focus, to go deep. And in that safety, your creativity returns. Your clarity returns. Your confidence returns, not because you have more control, but because you are finally inhabiting the only place real power lives, the present moment. Rebuilding focus is not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming human again. It's about honoring the part of you that wants to be here, fully, openly, with your whole being. It's about remembering that the ability to direct your attention is also the ability to direct your life. And when you reclaim that ability, you reclaim so much more than focus. You reclaim intimacy, wonder, reflection, real connection. In a world that is constantly trying to pull you away from yourself, choosing to stay is a radical act. Choosing to focus is revolutionary. Choosing to pay attention is the beginning of everything you say you want. More peace, more clarity, more meaning, more joy. So if you feel like life is slipping past you, not because it's too fast, but because you're too divided, stop, turn everything off, breathe, be still, and remind yourself that you don't have to chase what matters. You only have to return to it. Again and again, with love, with patience, with practice. Your focus is your freedom, and you don't get it back by trying harder. You get it back by coming home to yourself and staying. There comes a moment, somewhere between exhaustion and awareness, when you realize that no one is coming to rescue you. No breakthrough is going to land in your lap. No motivation is going to strike like lightning and turn your life around. You're not waiting on clarity or energy or some mystical alignment of stars. What you're actually waiting for, whether you admit it or not, is permission. And the only person who can give it is you. It's easy to forget this, especially in a world that keeps telling you to pause. Take your time. Wait until you're ready. Make sure everything is perfect before you begin. But readiness is a myth. Perfection is a trap. And time? Time keeps moving whether you act or not. So the longer you delay, the further you drift from the life you claim to want. And one day, you wake up so far from yourself that you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. Not because something terrible happened, but because you never chose to begin. That's the quiet tragedy of inaction. It doesn't hurt at first. It even feels safe. But over time, it steals more than risk ever could. It steals your agency, your momentum, your belief in yourself. And eventually, it steals your hope. Not in some dramatic explosion, but in slow erosion. The kind of loss you don't notice until the foundation is already cracked. But here's what's even more painful. Most people don't stop moving because they've failed. They stop because they've convinced themselves they're not ready. They wait for a better season, a better mindset, a better version of themselves. But what they don't realize is that action itself is the catalyst for those very things. You don't become confident and then act. You act. And through action, confidence emerges. You don't get clarity first. You get clarity from engaging, from stumbling forward, from adjusting as you move. There is a profound shift that happens when you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what can I do today? Not what's ideal, not what's impressive, just what's available. A walk around the block, a single paragraph written, a call made, a promise kept. These things are not small, they are sacred. Because each one is a declaration. I am no longer a passive participant in my own life. Too often, we confuse simplicity with insignificance. We think if it's not big, it doesn't count. But the truth is, transformation rarely arrives in one grand moment. It's built in the quiet, in repetition, in consistency. The strongest lives are not forged in leaps, but in steady steps, taken day after day by people who decided they were worth showing up for. So if you're waiting for the big change, the perfect plan, the right moment, it's time to stop waiting. You already have everything you need to begin. Not everything you'll need eventually, but everything you need to start. And that's what matters most. Because starting is where your power lives. Starting says, I may not have it all figured out, but I'm willing to find out. Starting says, I won't let fear write the rest of my story. Starting says, I believe there is more in me than I've been using. And the moment you start, even in the smallest way, the world begins to shift. Not because it changes, but because you do. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of your source circumstances, but as the architect of your future. You begin to reclaim the pieces of yourself that felt lost, not because they magically return, but because you create the conditions for them to rise again. That's what action does. It revives you. It reconnects you to your body, your mind, your purpose. It restores the belief that you are still capable of change, and that belief is a flame. Once lit, it refuses to be ignored. It pushes you, challenges you, awakens you. But don't mistake this for perfection. Action doesn't mean you won't doubt or fail or stumble. You will. But the difference is this: you will be in motion. You will be alive. Because action, more than any thought, any feeling, any plan, is proof that you're still in the fight, still becoming, still here. And if you're afraid of getting it wrong, let me offer you a new perspective. The only wrong move is no move at all. Stagnation is the slow death of potential. It numbs, it erases, it convinces you that stillness is safety when it's really suffocation. Movement, no matter how uncertain, is the path back to breath, to self, to life. So start. Start with what you have. Start with what you know. Start with what you feel. Don't wait for the fire. Be the spark. Light the match, fan the flame, and if it flickers, light it again and again, because your life is not waiting for someone else to wake you up. It's waiting for you to remember that you were always the one who held the key. You don't have to be extraordinary to act. You just have to be willing. You don't need a vision for the next 10 years. You just need enough vision for today. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to show up like you are already worthy, because you are. And the moment you do that, even just once, you break the cycle. You defy the narrative. You become the kind of person who moves, even when it's hard, even when it's unclear, even when it's uncomfortable. And that kind of person, they don't just change their life, they reclaim it. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not too late. You're exactly where you need to be to begin again. So begin. Not someday, now. Reflection. There's a silent erosion happening in many of us, a slow drift from our own power, our own clarity, our own presence. It doesn't begin with crisis or collapse. It begins with comfort, with routines that numb instead of nourish, with choices made on autopilot, with thoughts left unexamined, bodies left unmoved, potential left untouched. We don't notice the change at first. We still go to work, check our phones, laugh at memes, and reply to emails. But underneath the surface, something essential is fading: our aliveness. Aliveness isn't about how busy you are, how many goals you check off, or how loud your life appears. Aliveness is about how deeply you're engaging with your own experience, how honestly you're facing your thoughts, how courageously you're moving your body, how consistently you're showing up for what really matters to you, even when no one is watching. And the hard truth is this: you can't think your way back to life. You have to use yourself back to life: your body, your mind, your focus, your inner fire. Every part of you was made to be used. Not recklessly, but purposefully. The more you use your energy with intention, the more energy you create. The more you think deeply, the sharper your thinking becomes. The more you focus, the deeper your presence grows. The more you move, the stronger and more vibrant you feel. And the more you act, the more confidence and clarity return. Everything you want to reclaim begins with one truth: what you don't use, you lose. Lesson and application. The key lesson here is simple but profound. You don't need to wait until you're ready, healed, or perfect to begin again. You just need to begin using what you already have, even if it's small, even if it's shaky, even if it's slow. Start moving your body. Start thinking intentionally. Start focusing on one thing each day. Start showing up for yourself in one honest way, even when it feels insignificant. These micro movements compound into transformation. That's how you build momentum, rebuild trust with yourself, and reignite your life from within. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Join our community at Success Lesson, where people like you are choosing to reclaim their energy, their clarity, and their lives. We share insights, tools, and encouragement to help you grow, reflect, and rise, one day at a time. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the channel to support us in creating more content that challenges, empowers, and awakens. Your growth is our mission, and your presence is our fuel. Let's continue together.